I'm going to hand over to Dr. Yinka Akindayomi. She's going to take us on common learning difficulties children have, and she's also going to teach us give us little tips on how we can assess them as well. So Ma, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Ma.
Okay, good morning to everyone. For those who already know me, you know that I'm very interactive, whatever I do. So we're going to have a blast, but I hear that there's time constraints. So I'm going to keep it exactly to the 30 minutes or 20 minutes that I can. So let me quickly share my slide, share my screen with you. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. We can see your screen.
Okay, good.
Yes,
good morning again. The most important thing here is for you to know that Dr. Akindayomi is not an expert, and this is just more or less an eye-opener or a tongue wetting on learning disabilities. I'm going to speed through because I tend to talk a lot because I'm very passionate about what I do, but I hope that there will be time for questions and answers. I've also told, I think, Nwaneke, sorry, you know me and Nate, that I will give her my presentation slides later on so that she can share them with anybody that is interested. So let's get along with this a little bit. Okay, so the first thing I know I've been introduced, but I can't help myself. I really have to show you this little video about myself. So please bear with me. It's less than 1 minute, and I think you will enjoy it. Well, I was recently told by a young doctor that if you don't, sorry. I was recently told by a young doctor, if you don't market yourself, nobody will know you're out there. So that is how I'm marketing myself now, using everything that is available to us. One of the things that I feel is important when you do a presentation, that there is key participation, because there's no point in us trying to say you're training, and the people, your audience that you're training is not participating, otherwise there's no learning that takes place. So I am hoping that all the people that are online that were actually participating in this. As I said, all questions will be left till the end, and I'm going to sort of speed through my slides, and hopefully you will be able to take certain key points home. Okay, so let's do a quick one. You can put this in the chat box, and I give you only 1 minute. If you were a famous actor, what would you be? So the time is counting. Once it's 1 minute, you put everything in the chat box. I'm sure the host of this, of the training, of this program rather, will come back and tell us who said what. So 1 minute is on, yes? If you were a famous actor, who would you be? Okay, I guess maybe time is up. How many seconds, Ebele? 2 more seconds. Okay, 2 more seconds. I'm hoping I only have 10, 11, 12 responses, 13 responses out of 45. I guess the others are still a little bit busy. Done. Okay, so we're moving on here. We're going to talk about learning disabilities, and I'm hoping you can see my face because, good, it's at the top now. We're going to talk about learning disabilities in children, and for me, this is a particularly very important topic, particularly in Nigeria, because sometimes are we able to decide who has a learning disability and who does not have a learning disability. And I'll tell you my own perspective on the term itself. So what are you going to do? What will you learn? That is what we're going to cover. Proposed outcomes. And I've put a nice disclaimer there so that at least you know that somebody is raising their hand. I can't answer any questions now, sorry. I can, Waneka can do the answering of the hands up, but I can't take any questions now. Okay, so again, we're going to look at what will you learn, proposed outcomes, and disclaimers. Okay, so what will you learn? You're going to learn about learning disabilities, how do we identify a child with learning disabilities and what to do about it. And I think the last point is so very important, because if we go around identifying children and we don't know what to do with those children, then we're doing a disservice to those families. Also, the proposed outcome for me is that we increase our level of awareness and knowledge. And I know that most people who are coming online already know about learning disabilities. So I'm making that assumption that they would know. Please, can you turn off your mics, please? Angela, can you turn off your mic? Angela, you are taking in my time. Can you turn off your mic? Okay, I'm taking it off. Okay, thank you. We are to be more familiar about the rights of children with disabilities. And I haven't said just learning disabilities, I've looked at disabilities in general, because every child has a right. I know the slogan is leave no child behind, but in actual fact, all these children have rights. And if you look very closely at what the UN is saying, the UN is declaring, it states that all children, regardless of any abilities, they all have rights to education. So it makes us think, because sometimes even as educators, as teachers, I get this feeling that, oh, you know, yeah, they have, we have children with disabilities, but are they educable? And it's something that sticks in my throat. Are they educable? But they have rights. So it's something for all of us to think about. And the last one is to be disability friendly, because I always believe, as I spoke to Waneka, I think, Waneka, that look, if you are going to advocate for special education, yeah, but it means that you have to be disability friendly in all spheres. Okay, so the next one. What this presentation is not about, it's not about you becoming experts overnight, because again, I have trained many people, and all of a sudden they will say, oh, they trained with Dr. Akinda Emi, They are now experts extraordinaire. Okay, it took me 30 years to even become a so-called expert, and even then I'm not an expert. Once you become an expert, what it means is that you are of no use to anybody because you stop learning. So I am not an expert, I'm still learning. The other thing is this. After we do this presentation, it would be very important for us not to start labeling children. I always say labels belong on bottles, they don't belong on children, and we must keep it that way. When you label a child, that label goes with that child throughout that child's life. And you grow up as an adult and you still have a label. Why do you have that label? And it also affects the way in which we look at children. So if a child has a label, then a teacher could decide that is how she's going to deal with that child, because that child has that label. So in order not to belabor the issue, those are the things we're going to learn together today. Okay, so moving on. In a Nigerian setting, what is a learning disability? And I think this always makes me smile, because who is the child with a learning disability? If we are to look at our own society, our culture, the way we do things in Nigeria, the Nigerian factor, who really is a child with learning disability? Now, I give you another task. Write down some traditional terminologies you know that means learning disability. I give you 1 minute. Ebele next to me will time you. So you can drop them in the chat box. It will be very interesting to find out what people still, amongst even the younger generation, what traditional terminologies you know about children with learning disabilities. So can you start quickly? Okay. Are we dropping or are we having a think? How many seconds, Ebele? Okay, you have 5 more seconds and we move on. Just some of the traditional terminologies, think about it. I heard Nwaneka say people are joining us throughout the Federation. So just think about in your locality, what a terminology, what sort of traditional terminologies you have. It will be interesting to know. Okay, so she says we're done and we are moving on. What is a learning disability? Well, I always say it depends on what part of the globe you come from. Because when you look at what the term learning disability means in the US, it's about specific learning challenges such as dyslexia. So unless they've changed it now, and from what I know from a couple of months ago, because I do check, I update myself, it's still the same. It's about specific learning challenges. In the United Kingdom, it means development challenges associated with learning disabilities. And I will give you some examples as we move on, but let me give you one example here. What the United Kingdom is saying that learning disabilities is all about is that if you have something like Down syndrome, then more or less you are bound to have a learning difficulty. So when they talk about learning difficulties, they put all those various labels under learning difficulties. So that's the way the United Kingdom looks at it, whereas the US makes it more specific. I haven't really gone out of looking at maybe what France and Germany or what China looks at, but I guess it would be interesting how they also look at these terminologies. Now I'll come back to my dearest country ever, Nigeria. What does it mean? Well, from what I know is stupid, slow, moron, imbecile. I know I will give my country some credit. We have begun to move away from some of these terminologies that are really not really negative terminologies. However, when we say learning difficulties in this country, are we talking about specific learning challenges as in US, or are we talking about developmental challenges associated with learning difficulties as in the United Kingdom? Is there enough research going on out there that can sort of define what the Nigerian terminologies are and what they will look like in the future? Okay, so there's quite a bit of confusion around terminologies. However, that does not stop us from doing what we need to do when we identify children in accordance with the US way or in the UK way. It does not stop us from doing the right thing. But what is very important is that we begin to develop our own positive local languages. And I know maybe for the future, as they said, this is just whetting people's mind or provoking thoughts. When we do another presentation on learning disabilities that is a bit more detailed, then maybe we can share with you some of the names that we have found during the course of my research. Okay, so rule number one, trying to make sure that everybody is on the same page. What is the difference between learning disabilities and intellectual disabilities? Please note, they are different. Learning disabilities, cognitive ability can be spared, meaning that a child can learn, but because of the challenges, the wiring, the neurodiversity, that child is finding it difficult to learn the way in which we want that child to learn. And now we're finding out there are so many different methodologies and so many different methodologies to help children learn as much as possible. What do I mean by this? For instance, you might find a child might have a learning disability if he's learning within the traditional way the classroom is run. But if that child is able to get his hands on a computer, you'll be amazed at what that child knows. So that is where I'm saying cognitive ability may be spared. Other developmental milestones are not affected. Oh dear, we're having some problems here with people joining with their mics on, and it's affecting the training.
Sorry about that, ma'am. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. The other thing is that developmental milestones might not be affected. So, for instance, you might have a child that is, has a learning disability, but goes through the normal developmental milestones. So you might not even know until that child reaches school age that this child has a learning disability. The other thing is that, okay, in intellectual disabilities, everything is grossly affected. So there, you would know that this child is delayed right from the very beginning, maybe neck control, maybe sitting, maybe crawling, all those things will be affected. And usually the global delay is, there's a global delay. So everything about that child is affected, which in learning disabilities is quite different. Okay, this is just from the WHO. So in any country, we are actually meant to be being able to recognize these 8 types of disabilities. And the saying goes that if a layman on the street does not understand any type of disability, is it really a disability? And I tend to agree with that. So you've got mobility, physical, spinal cord, head injuries, vision, hearing, cognitive/learning, psychological, and invisible. Invisible are those disabilities that are there, but it doesn't, children might not present with those disabilities. So it would be interesting to know how many of these do the audience recognize. Okay, so I might not talk about courses, so many courses, because there are so many risk factors. And as I was going through, just talking through the slides, I just realized that, the audience might want to talk about courses. Usually during pregnancy, when the mother is not getting proper antenatal care, she might not take the right amount of folic acid, she might not take the right amount of iron, and so on and so forth. So it's so wide, the courses and the risk factors. But I guess if I'm invited back again and we dwell into a lot of detail, then obviously we can discuss many of these courses. So getting back to detecting learning disabilities, there are meant to be about 37 different symptoms. And to diagnose a child, that child must have 10 of those symptoms. And the funny thing about this is that the characteristics of a child with learning disability, it varies from day to day and minute to minute. Because you can't say, some children might start, you might say, oh, this child has a learning disability because he's not writing properly. And then next month, he's actually doing what you want him to do. You might say this child is not doing well in maths and he doesn't know his numbers. And then all of a sudden next week, he's actually repeating the numbers. So the characteristics change. And I think that is really very important about labels, because sometimes you put a label on a child and it remains on that child, whereas it's meant to be, it can change. It can change at any one time, especially when intervention is taking place. The most consistent thing about children with learning disabilities is their inconsistency. So I guess those out there who are teachers, educators, begin to note that it is their inconsistency that is the most consistent thing about a child with learning disabilities. Okay, so what do we note and where do we detect? In most part, we might not detect a child with learning disability at the healthcare level. It might not be obvious that this child might go and have a learning disability as the child grows. But I will say this, as a medical doctor, I do know that if a child is malnourished, you will find out that there is a higher risk of that child developing learning disabilities as he goes along. So it's really very important. I'm being distracted by Sunday. Mr. Sunday, can you put your video up? You're beginning to distract me. Please, it's distracting. I'm getting distracted. Thank you. Okay, so a lot of children with learning disabilities have difficulty telling right from left, reversing letters, words, or numbers after first or second grade. You know, when children begin to learn how to read and write, they do all those things. They will reverse the letters, they write P and D and mix them up. But as the child gets older, obviously you will note that this child might have some difficulty. And I always believe in letting children, giving children what you call a long rope, so that you enable them to make some of these things, because maybe that is how that child learns. And it is not really a learning disability, but maybe it's a little bit of delay in that child understanding the concepts of what you're trying to teach that child. The other thing is recognizing shapes, difficulty in recognizing those shapes, items, and sizes. I remember many years back when I used to do a lot of assessments, when the kids that have learning disability present to me, you know, you have a picture of an elephant and they'll tell you quite frankly, it's a chicken. And I couldn't understand, why is this child, isn't it obvious? And this child is maybe 6, 7. And he's still telling me that, no, that is a chicken. That is a chicken. And I'm showing the child an elephant. So obviously when children have learning difficulties, there's a problem in connecting the object with whatever the picture is in their mind. So these are some of the issues. The other thing is understanding and following instructions or staying organized. Again, I've had children that I've come across, you ask them, okay, so you woke up this morning and what did you do? And the child will delightfully tell you about what they watched on TV. So these are some of the things that one would be watching out for. Okay, the other thing is remembering what was just said, short-term memory, and what was just read. And that's a real difficulty for a lot of children in classrooms, because if you can't understand what your teacher just said and what was read, then you're going to be totally confused about the situation. And then things begin to happen. Sometimes children have issues with coordination. And I tell you that a lot of children, when they're buttoning up, that's the fast way of knowing how to, whether a child might have a learning difficulty, not being able to coordinate and button up their shirt. Another classic one is tying laces, but I always laugh about tying laces because a lot of parents that I've met can't tie laces either. And nowadays in the modern world, you either tuck your laces in or you buy sneakers that have Velcro, or even buy sneakers that you just slip on your feet. So that might not be the only thing about indicator about learning difficulties. The others with hands. Can everybody hear me? Am I still?
Yes, ma, I can hear you.
Yes, madam, we can hear you.
Okay, because my internet is beginning to buzz.
No, ma, we can hear you.
Okay, great. The other thing is writing, cutting. You know, it's amazing that a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old is not able to coordinate scissors, just ordinary scissors. So you can tell by all these things coming together. It's not just one thing, it's a number of things coming together that are the indicators for learning difficulties. And then understanding the concept of time. Well, sometimes I don't understand the concept of time. I might have a learning difficulty myself because I always go over whenever I do presentations. So, but jokes apart, sometimes children don't have the concept of time, and also sharing the concept of turn taking. I have this toy, and then I'm going to go over to the next. They don't have that issue. Waneka, I will beg everybody that is coming on now. I also have a problem with people coming in and they don't mute their mics. It's not what we're talking about. Okay, so the next one is children will learn. Well, I guess if you've got Femi or Aki or Ola or Titi with all those indicators, then obviously a child will feel frustrated. And many times teachers say, well, he's disrupting my class. This is a naughty boy. This child, well, did you look closely to see what's going on with that child? Do you really know your children? It's not just for parents to know their children. If you're an educator, you must know your child. It's paramount. The other thing is that children are unable to master their subjects, even though they're trying hard, and that causes frustration. You know, they're trying to do what you tell them to do, and in earnest. And then somebody comes out with a big cane and whacks the living daylights out of you. I mean, is that taking all children along? The other things that some children might become withdrawn, so psychological, mental health might then become an issue, and then emotional and behavioral disorders. Okay, so what all this means in a nutshell is that you now have Femi, Aki, or Titi underachieving, frustration, self-low esteem, behavioral challenges, unmotivated, and dislikes. I mean, I was put in this category at one time of a child who had learning difficulties, and I will tell you no lie, I hate school. But this is me today. I thank God by His grace that I have a whole load, and this is me, who has surmounted a nice level of learning difficulties. But I really do feel for our children in Nigeria, because there are so many children that are underachieving, and when a child in Nigeria underachieves, that means Nigeria is losing the talent and ability of one child, and you never know what that child is all about. Please, can you turn off your mic, please? Please turn off your mic. Thank you. Okay, so enough about that. Let me move on. Yes, I did promise you this slide, and this is really what connects the UK definition to what I was trying to say. The UK definition, excuse me, Monica, somebody is disrupting the training.
Yes, ma, I've muted them. Sorry about that, ma.
Please. Okay, so one of the things that I was trying to emphasize was that in the UK, learning disabilities is associated with disorders. So you have specific learning disabilities, you have hearing loss, you have ADHD and its brother ADD, you have intellectual disabilities, you have autism spectrum disorders, all under the umbrella of learning disabilities. So that is what I really wanted to draw out and to remind you that different countries have different terminologies, and what will be the Nigerian terminologies for learning disabilities. Okay, so this is just a blurb of all the different specific learning disabilities. And as I said, I don't have the time to go through each and every one, but Waneka has promised me that if they bring me back, we will do diligent justice and then go through each and every one of these types of specific learning disabilities. Okay, so management. I put here, management, not treatment. And you see the young man on the side, because men, Nigerian men, always want their children to do very well, as everybody does. But at the end of the day, parents have to realize that it's about management and not treatment. I know a lot of people say, oh, the methodology is treatment. But to be honest with you, a lot of people or a lot of children that have learning disabilities, although they can manage them, manage the disabilities, manage the challenges, but in all honesty, is there with you. I'm one of them. I've always had problems with very long words, and I had problems with spelling. Well, thank God, we're in the days of digital and computer, so spelling check always checks my own spelling for me. And the long words, well, I can pass that. Now that I'm old, I can pass that and say, well, I didn't get that. I use simple words. So that is the size of that. Okay, so Nigerian men that are out there, if your child has learning disabilities, the sky is the limit. And I won't even say the sky is the limit. There are no limits. It's just that we need to learn how to manage our children effectively. I spoke to a group of mothers recently, and all the mothers that came to me, they had children with disabilities. And I said, you know, the beautiful thing of bringing up a child with disability in Nigeria is that Nigeria know they last. That statement is a very strong statement about the Nigerian psyche. Like, even if your child has disability, your child will have the best disability. They will be the best at what they do. And I think that is the great thing about Nigeria. So our solutions really about the Nigerian child are really at home, not just out there. We can gain experience, we can gain knowledge. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We need to be innovative. Okay, so it's a lifelong situation. There is no cure, I would say, but people can challenge me on that one, and I'm okay with it. Outcomes can be very good with early identification, proper monitoring, and management. So I'm going to just give you a list of professionals, and I'm just going to end. So the list of professionals that should be involved, and I'm glad that I have lived long enough, and I believe I'm going to live longer, to see more professionals evolve in Nigeria, if they haven't jackpot overseas, but at least more Nigerian professionals that can identify children with learning disabilities, and we can do something about it. So you need a neurologist to do in-depth investigations. You need a pediatrician. I myself am a community pediatrician, so I've seen many children. Many developing CDC has given me the opportunity to develop services and continue to develop those services. Okay, in some cases you might need a psychiatrist, and really and truly it is if a child is developing mental health issues, then I can say yes. We can look at the psychiatrist, we can look at a psychologist, but they're not the first people. They're not the first contact. Your first contact is a neurologist, it is the pediatrician. Those are your first port of call, not the psychiatrist or your psychologist. They can refer them on because they're very important in the team and in the scheme of things, but shouldn't really be your first contact. But in Nigeria, they're the first contact. So Nigeria is Nigeria. I believe we will get it right the Nigerian way. The other thing is the audiologist, because just like I said, learning disability can be associated with hearing loss, and you don't want to miss hearing loss. So it's really very important that you have an audiologist, speech therapist, occupational therapist. Lastly, is it lastly? Not lastly. I shouldn't be saying lastly. I'm sweating here. Can you get something for me? When I get very passionate, I begin to sweat. So you'll excuse me if you see me wiping my face. Okay, so school educational psychologist, I think that profession is beginning to emerge. It gives interpretation of the psychological and educational tests for children. Also, speech and learning therapy. It's really unfortunate that in Nigeria today, we have very few people who are in speech and language therapy. One of the things we have done in CDC is to join forces with a group in America called Gemini, and we're working on launching the Gemini Nigeria, because there's thousands of children that need speech therapy and they're not getting anything. So we decided that, okay, in order to help the situation, maybe if we launch Gemini Nigeria, which will be coming soon, to help schools, to help teachers with the communication aspects of children. But we've already started, I think we have how many? We have about 30 children who are already using the Gemini system in Nigeria presently, and we hope more will join. Okay, others are educational consultants, educational therapists, and this is all under education. I believe that education, if a child has learning difficulties in education, there should be somebody who coordinates all the services, all the components that that child needs to make it easier for the parents. Lastly, I think learning disability specialist is one. I think somebody joined us, one of the speakers who is in learning support in one of the schools. That is really emerging in a lot of mainstream schools. If those schools want to liaise with CDC so that we can also help and support them, then they should reach out to us. Well, obviously, as I've made the last point, we definitely do not need all these professionals. Otherwise, I think there will be chaos, everybody will suffer. So you have to decide, there should be somebody who knows the system, who knows what should be done first, second, third, and fourth. And if you ever want a plan, parents, if you are joining us, if you ever want a plan, Ebele is excellent at planning out service provision for children with any type of disabilities, including learning disabilities. Okay, so how do we respond? We get, this mainly is for parents, get help early, have your child evaluated by the right people. I cannot stress on that more than enough, because sometimes parents go from pillar to post, from post to pillar, and they get so frustrated. And then they tell us that, oh, we didn't know about you. And then they go off again, and then we don't see them again. So really and truly, parents should not go into this shopping syndrome. Know your child's strengths. I always tell parents about this. Look at strengths, not weaknesses. You can look at strengths, you can look at emerging skills, but please do not hamper on weaknesses. I'll tell you a secret. If you hamper on the weaknesses, you get a very strong weaknesses as opposed to the strengths of the children. So I think if there are parents out there listening to what I'm saying, these are the things that you should home in on. Any strength your child has, any talent, any ability that child has, you must home in on and take advantage of it. Collect information about your child's performance. Work as a team to help your child. Parents, I know that these are your children, but it's teamwork and team effort. As a parent of a child that has a learning difficulty, I can assure you my successes has been with therapists, with other parents, with all sorts of professionals. It's a team effort, not you alone to take on the world. Again, talk to your child. For older children, talk to your child about their learning disabilities so they're comfortable in their skin. We all have something that we're dealing with. And I think that is so important. Find accommodation that can help. What I mean by that, find schools that are friendly. Find those schools that are friendly. There are many schools that are not very friendly, and I can't blame them. Their main goal is academics, and academic it is. So look for those schools. In Nigeria, there are those schools that are a bit more friendly and are willing to take on children and let children thrive within the environment. Monitor your child's progress. Some children, some families will throw their children at the teacher and say, you take, I pay school fees. It doesn't work like that. You must monitor your child's progress. We're not asking you to become teachers. I was never a teacher of my son. I'm still not a teacher. I'm a trainer. I call myself a trainer. You can decide what that means. But I just believe that your child's progress, you bring up your children in a natural way. As a mother, you teach children anyway. I would prefer to teach my child about how to cook in the kitchen, how to wash plates, how to do chores, how to do this. It's all teaching. Not everything is about academics. Know your legal educational rights. And I'm glad that Lagos State representatives are also here. They're doing a great job. I've worked with them for the last 2 years on inclusive education. I can understand their challenges and how tough it might be. We all might say, Lagos State is not doing anything, Jerry, but that is not true. I used to be one of them, but I think I have calmed down. I'm shooting over time. I know we didn't start early, but I must say this to Lagos State. I congratulate all those Lagos State. Thank you. I congratulate all those in Lagos State who at least have inclusive educational schools. I'm hoping that for the future CDC will be able to work with them on many different levels. So congratulations, Lagos State. However, it's really very important for us to be aware of the Special People's Law and what is in that Special People's Law, because that is a very special people's law. It's a very special law. There are areas that tell you about the rights of children with special learning disabilities that need assistance and support. It is all about leaving no child behind. Okay, trust your intuition, meet with your teacher. As I said, observe strengths and interests, encourage school and play. So encourage your children to go to school. There are too many children on our streets. There are too many children on our streets. And we begin to wonder why we have the issues we have now. So it's concerning when children are not in school. I've been told we have 10.5 million children in Nigeria out of school, and 95% of those children are children with disabilities. So I'm sure there will be a large percentage of children with learning difficulties amongst them. Okay, so where am I here? I think it's really important, both teachers and families, to realize you're not alone. Learn as much as you can as a teacher. Know your legal rights and responsibilities is really very important. Legislation. You see, I also have some difficulties sometimes. You can read no legislation, no rights. I think what I'm also trying to say is that there are legislation and rights in Nigeria, but they're not really implemented. You didn't start on time, so I'm going to finish off. The important thing is that there is an IEP for every child. So this is the last slide. This is just an introduction to learning disability. There is much, much more. look forward to our training on learning disabilities online. Thank you very much, and God bless you.